Hello, I'm Daniel Hines with SteinerBooks, here today with author John Bloom to discuss his book, Inhabiting Interdependence. So a few moments ago you mentioned the salary, the concept of salary and the essay around that having been unexpectedly popular on the internet. So would you like to say a little bit more about that?
Sure. The issue came up, or what sort of sparked me was many years working in an organization, particularly inspired by the work of Rudolf Steiner, that looks at labor not as a commodity, but actually a human capacity. Mm-hmm. And I was looking at the Sunday New York Times, I think in the review section, and there was a quarter-page ad. It was in the education section, and the quarter-page ad basically said, "Earn what you're worth." I mean, that was the line in there. And that, I just sat there and I looked at that statement and realized how deeply woven that kind of statement, or that kind of, what that statement represents by way of thinking is, mm-hmm. into how we think of salary and how we get compensated and how we evaluate and how we, even the notion of self-worth, mm-hmm. and how problematic that's become. Mm-hmm. And in fact, in 1914, Congress passed an act that said labor is not a commodity. So, mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And yet we've commoditized ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we sell our labor. I'm worth X number of dollars per hour, and
mm-hmm.
All of that I think needs to be really re-looked at, because human worth cannot possibly have a price tag attached to it. Not really. The value of a human being. How could you possibly put a price tag on that? Mm-hmm. We've done a good job.
It's done quite frequently.
Yes, right. But if you take the notion of even labor as a commodity, you get to the logical conclusion of slave labor. Because in a commodity market, the producer wants to charge more, but the consumer wants more for less. So if you want to sell it, you need to lower your price and produce more quantity. When you get to the logical conclusion is, well, we can make more profit from it if we have the labor for free.
All the way to zero.
Right,
yeah.
Right.
So, logical end.
Right, is the logical end. And that's kind of a painful way of thinking through what the histories actually look like and how economies have operated. So how do we place worth on a human being? And the fact is we really cannot. Labor is not a commodity. You can sell the product of your work, but you can't really sell your work. I mean, how can I sit here and say, Daniel, you're worth more than I am? I mean, I can't fathom how we get there. So the fact is, compensation or salary is really, the purpose of it is to make sure that your material needs are met, so that you can bring your capacities to the work. So, for example, a very practical way of addressing that is something we do at RSF Social Finance is we pay prospectively, meaning we pay the minute you walk in the door, you receive a check, and that check is to make sure that your material needs are met so that you're then free to come and bring your best self to work. And you don't sit there thinking, gosh, I need to work more to make more money, or I'm working for the money. I'm not. I'm actually working because I want to further the enterprise, I want to further the mission, I want to further what's going on here, and I'm not worried about how I'm going to pay my rent, because that already happened in the past.
Right.
So it's a very small gesture, but it's a very simple way of saying, actually, your paycheck is not connected directly to the work you do. It's really connected to your material needs, like living and all the rest, so that there's no value to in a sense, there's no price tag attached to the labor.
Right.
It's actually your gift to the work once the material things are sort of wrestled with.
Right.
So that blew a few folks' lid.
Right. Well, and then theoretically, if the logical endpoint of labor as commodity is slavery and zero price on labor, then what's the logical endpoint of paying people for their needs? What does that society look like if you took that to the extreme? If everyone were doing it.
So I would say, first of all, it certainly, in an ideal world, means that if people are able to meet their needs, their basic needs, so that they're free to really dig deeply into culture. Yeah, so if their basic needs are met, they're not worried and competing with each other for limited resources. In fact, they're then freed up to bring their gifts to meet others' needs. And,
Mhm.
you know, I'm not worried about whether I can feed my children, and therefore I can help somebody else who has a real need, or I can do caregiving.
Mhm.
I can go off and invent new products.
Mhm.
And begin to assess where some of those real needs are in the
Mhm.
community, and find others who want to meet those needs. It just
It sounds like you get
sorry
a vastly more vibrant, also perhaps more livable society for then all participants.
Yeah, I would say yes. I think it's more livable because the motivation to be in society is one of, I would say, finding one's own purpose in life, rather than feeling like I have to work to
Conforming to whatever impressions you
Yeah.
get about what you're supposed to be doing at that age or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah.
So in some senses, I really see, if I just go to the 50,000-foot level right now, is that
Mhm.
actually culture is totally subservient to economic activity.
Mm-hmm.
And it needs to be returned in how we are in a culture, and how we recognize each other through our rites and our rituals, how we meditate, how we think, needs to be elevated back to at least on par with economic life. But right now, economic life seems to be what everything's about.
Right. Unit sales are the primary determinant of the quality of music or film or something like that.
Right. So we're not really free if we feel like everything we do in the culture has to be turned toward sale, or anything I do can be commoditized, or
Yeah, I was reminded of Van Gogh, who allegedly sold either 0 or 1 painting in his lifetime.
Yeah.
And yet, where would our culture and our art history be without his contribution?
Exactly. Yeah. So,
well, thank you, John. It's been a fascinating conversation.